A sharp crack rang out inside the McDonald's restaurant, piercing through the background noise and casual conversations with lethal clarity. Braxton Whitmore III lay twisting in agony on the clean tile floor, his right leg twisted at a sickening angle that caused multiple witnesses to retch into their burgers. His expensive footwear, costing more than most people's rent payments, pointed in contradictory directions. One ahead, one horrifyingly reversed. Standing over him was a teenage girl who had entered unnoticed just 3 minutes prior. Her damaged eyeglasses, repaired with medical adhesive and featuring a cracked lens, somehow remained perched on her face. "No amount of legal representation from your father can repair a complex bone fracture," Saffron Volkov stated calmly, readjusting the broken frames with unwavering hands. Her accent was faint, merely a trace of Eastern European heritage filtering through her carefully cultivated American pronunciation. Approximately 50 mobile devices documented the incident from various perspectives. The people recording struggled between shock at the brutality and satisfaction at witnessing Westmont Preparatory Academy's seemingly invincible golden child reduced to tears on cheap restaurant flooring. Braxton's anguished cry finally erupted through his initial shock, primal and high-pitched, completely unlike the authoritative tone he'd used to terrorize scholarship recipients for 3 consecutive years. His companions, Dashiell Park and Rook Martinez, remained motionless near the ordering counter. Their typical confidence had disappeared like vapor. They'd witnessed their leader humiliate numerous targets, but never encountered anyone who retaliated. Particularly not in this manner. Certainly not from a girl weighing approximately 110 pounds when drenched, who'd been dining alone in the school library merely 72 hours earlier. Invisible and insignificant, the restaurant supervisor, a weary-eyed, middle-aged individual whose identification badge read Gary, navigated through the gathered crowd with unexpected command, his mobile phone already connecting to emergency services. However, his attention lingered on Saffron momentarily. An indecipherable expression crossed his features. Could it be recognition? That seemed impossible. She was merely another adolescent worker on the evening shift, helping her grandmother cover living expenses, wasn't she? 72 hours prior, circumstances had been entirely different. Saffron had crossed through Westmont Preparatory Academy's elegant entrance for her inaugural visit, wearing a second-hand uniform that was ironed but clearly not recent. The material was a slightly variant shade from the current academic year's version. The security personnel had verified her identification documents twice, as though a scholarship recipient might possess counterfeit credentials. The remaining students flowed past in streams of affluence. Their discussions about vacation breaks in Gstaad and seasonal residences in the Hamptons created a backdrop of effortless wealth. Her grandmother had awakened at 4 a.m. to style Saffron's dark locks. Her fingers remained nimble despite arthritis from 3 decades of office cleaning work. "Remember, little wolf," she'd murmured in Russian. The endearment was a remnant from bedtime tales about courageous girls in shadowy forests. "You're attending for education. Everything else is irrelevant." Yet Babushka's gaze had been troubled, examining her granddaughter's expression for indicators of the temper that had resulted in Saffron's expulsion from 2 Chicago institutions. The temper that wasn't actually temper, but something else, something trained, refined, and deadly. Westmont's library made Saffron's previous educational institution resemble a storage space. 3 levels of mahogany shelving, reading areas with leather seating that likely exceeded her grandmother's monthly earnings. Computing equipment that wasn't assembled with adhesive tape and desperate hope. She'd located a corner workspace on the 2nd level, distant from primary foot traffic, and distributed her used textbooks. The calculus assignment was uncomplicated. Mathematical problems remained identical. Whether learned in a deteriorating Chicago public institution or a preparatory academy resembling a hybrid of Hogwarts and a Fortune 500 corporate headquarters, if you're experiencing that recognizable tension in your abdomen from your own educational experiences, you're not isolated. Press that approval button if you recall the sensation of being the outsider. And if these narratives of underdogs retaliating matter to you, that subscription button assists me in continuing to share them. The appreciation button, that's what allows these stories to reach individuals who require hearing they're not alone. Now observe Saffron's next actions. Because Braxton Whitmore III was preparing to make his appearance, The shadows obscured her notebook before she detected their approach. 3 boys advancing with the synchronized arrogance of apex predators who'd never encountered resistance. Braxton led them, 6 feet 2 inches of deliberately cultivated intimidation, from his artfully disheveled blonde locks to his customized uniform that somehow made him appear to be advertising for a preparatory academy rather than attending one. His cologne arrived before him, something French and aggressive that likely possessed a name beyond her pronunciation ability. Well, Braxton's voice conveyed that distinctive tone of inherited cruelty, smooth as vintage whiskey and twice as capable of causing damage. The charity recipient discovered our library. How egalitarian. Dashiell Park produced laughter on cue, though something flickered in his gaze. Discomfort. Guilt. He was shorter than Braxton, compact, and athletic with the kind of nervous energy suggesting he constantly calculated the social mathematics of every interaction. Rook Martinez reclined against the bookshelf, all casual menace, his father's judicial reputation worn like invisible protection. Saffron didn't raise her eyes from her calculus. She'd learned previously that eye contact was what predators desired: acknowledgement, fear, submission, anything except indifference. Her pencil continued steadily across the page, each number precise and controlled. Yet beneath the desk, her left hand had shifted position, fingers extending in a specific configuration that would have signified nothing to these boys, but would have sent cold terror through anyone who'd trained in certain facilities in Chechnya. "I'm addressing you," Braxton stated, his tone becoming sharper. He wasn't accustomed to being disregarded. In his world, attention was currency, and everyone paid. His hand moved toward her desk, likely intending to sweep her books onto the floor, a classic opening maneuver in the bully's handbook. The derivative of x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2 equals 3x squared plus 6x, Saffron stated quietly, continuing to write. "If you're seeking tutoring services, the fee is $20 per hour. Cash transactions only." The silence that ensued was beautiful in its totality. Even the ambient library sounds seemed to halt, as if the structure itself was holding its breath. Dashiell actually choked on his own laughter, converting it into an awkward cough. Rook straightened from his casual lean, suddenly interested in this deviation from the script. Braxton's expression underwent a fascinating transformation, surprise to confusion to fury, all within the span of 2 heartbeats. His hand completed its trajectory, but instead of sweeping her books away, it targeted her glasses, removing them from her face with the casual efficiency of someone who'd perfected the art of humiliation. The world transformed into impressionism, but Saffron had trained for this too. Hours blindfolded in her grandmother's apartment, navigating by sound and memory, learning to function when sight failed. She heard Braxton step back, probably holding her glasses up like a trophy. Without them, her vision was roughly 2400, legally blind without correction. "Oops," Braxton stated, his voice dripping false concern. "Let me assist you with those." The crack of breaking plastic was deliberately loud, theatrical. He'd snapped them at the bridge, a clean break that would be expensive to repair. $400 at minimum, if they could be repaired at all. That represented 2 weeks of her McDonald's earnings. A month of her grandmother's careful budgeting. Saffron's hand stilled on her pencil. For exactly 3 seconds, she didn't move at all. Didn't even breathe. In that stillness, something shifted in the library's atmosphere, subtle as a change in barometric pressure before a storm. Dashiell must have sensed it because he took an involuntary step backward, but Braxton was too intoxicated on his own performance to notice. "Problem?" he asked, dropping the broken glasses on her notebook. "I'm certain Daddy can purchase you new ones." "Oh, wait, where is Daddy?" "That's correct. Charity cases don't have those." The pencil in Saffron's hand snapped. Not broke, snapped with a sound like a small firecracker. The 2 pieces fell onto the desk. The wood splintered as if crushed in a vice. Her breathing had changed, deeper, more rhythmic, though only someone who knew what to listen for would have recognized the pattern. Combat breathing. Systema training, the kind of breath control that preceded either meditation or violence. "Walk away," she said, her voice so quiet that Dashiell had to lean forward to hear it. "Now." Braxton laughed, delighted by what he interpreted as impotent rage. "Or what? You'll report me? Get me in trouble?" He leaned down, his cologne overwhelming at close range. My father donated $3 million to this institution last year. The principal has my family on speed dial. You're nothing here. Less than nothing. You're a rounding error in the budget. A feel-good story for the school's diversity pamphlet. Saffron finally looked up, and even through the blur of her uncorrected vision, something in her expression made Braxton hesitate. Her eyes were gray, the color of winter storms over Lake Michigan, and utterly without fear. She'd seen worse than him. She'd survived worse than him. He just didn't know it yet. Your father is Braxton Whitmore, Jr., she said conversationally, CEO of Whitmore Defense Industries. Net worth approximately $800 million. Government contracts primarily in drone technology and surveillance systems. Currently under Senate investigation for cost overruns on the Prometheus project. Your mother departed when you were 12. Relocated to Tuscany with her Pilates instructor. You have a half-sister in Switzerland you've never met. The library fell so silent that the fluorescent light's hum sounded like a swarm of angry wasps. Braxton's face had gone pale, then red, then a concerning shade of purple. No one knew about the sister. His father had paid significant sums to keep that information buried. How? Daschle started, then shut his mouth when Braxton's glare swung toward him. Public information, Saffron said, gathering her broken glasses with steady hands. Amazing what you can find with a laptop and decent research skills. For instance, Daschle, your father isn't really a venture capitalist. He's a middleman for foreign investments that can't legally enter the country directly. Mostly Saudi money, some Russian. And Rook, your uncle the judge, he's been accepting bribes for reduced sentences for 6 years. There's a lovely paper trail if you know where to look. She stood, sliding her notebooks into a backpack that had seen better decades. Even blind, she moved with an odd grace, never bumping into furniture, never stumbling. Gentlemen, she said with a small nod that somehow felt like a threat. Enjoy your afternoon. She was 3 steps away when Braxton found his voice. You're dead, he snarled loud enough for half the library to hear. You think you can threaten me, my family? I will destroy you. You'll be gone from this school by Friday. Saffron paused but didn't turn around. Friday? She repeated as if tasting the word. All right, let's see what happens by Friday. The following 2 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Braxton's campaign began immediately. Her locker was filled with rotting fish Monday night, the smell overwhelming anyone within 20 feet. Her uniform was stolen from her gym locker during physical education, forcing her to wear her sweaty workout clothes to afternoon classes. Someone, definitely Rook, judging by the handwriting, had written "commie trash" across her calculus homework in permanent marker, but Saffron navigated it all with an eerie calm that began to unnerve even Braxton's most loyal followers. When she opened her locker Tuesday morning and rancid fish juice poured onto her shoes, she simply photographed the mess, changed into the spare shoes she'd apparently started carrying, and attended class as if nothing had happened. When someone accidentally spilled chocolate milk on her during lunch, she thanked them for the complimentary beverage and continued eating her sandwich. The janitor, an elderly Polish man named Kowalski, watched it all with growing interest. On Wednesday afternoon, as Saffron was cleaning fish remnants from her locker for the 3rd time, he approached with his mop bucket. You know, he said in accented English, I observe how you move. Very specific, very... He paused, searching for the word. Practiced. Saffron glanced at him, noting the way he held the mop. Not like a janitor at all, but like someone accustomed to holding weapons. His stance was too balanced, his awareness of his surroundings too complete. You see a lot of things, Mr. Kowalski. I see girl who counts exits when she enters room, he replied quietly. Girl who sits with back to wall always. Girl who knows 17 ways to kill with pencil. That's very specific, Saffron said, not denying it. Kowalski smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. In Warsaw, before I am janitor, I am something else. Grom, you know this? Polish Special Forces. I know Sistema when I see it. Russian style, but older variant. Chechen variant, yes? Saffron's hand stilled on her locker. My grandmother is from Grozny, she said carefully. Ah. Kowalski nodded as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, had been leveled and rebuilt so many times that survival itself had become an art form. The people who emerged from that crucible were either broken or transformed into something harder than diamonds. Your grandmother, she teach you? My parents taught me, Saffron corrected softly. Before they died. Kowalski absorbed this information with a professional's understanding. Parents who knew Sistema well enough to teach the Chechen variant weren't civilians. They were operators, assets, the kind of people whose deaths were rarely accidental and never fully explained. The boy, Kowalski said, tilting his head toward the hallway where Braxton held court. He does not know what he has awakened. He'll learn, Saffron replied, closing her locker with a soft click. Friday. He'll learn, but Braxton wasn't content to wait until Friday. Thursday afternoon, he discovered Saffron worked the evening shift at the McDonald's on Riverside Avenue. The information came from Dashiell, who'd followed her after school, though he'd looked increasingly uncomfortable with each escalation of Braxton's campaign. He'd started recording everything on his phone, not to share or mock, but to document. He remembered his sister Adelaide, who transferred schools the previous year after an incident with Braxton that his father's lawyers had made disappear. The bruises had faded, but Adelaide still flinched when men raised their voices. McDonald's? Braxton had laughed when Dashiell reported back. How perfect. The charity case serving peasant food to other charity cases. We have to visit, show our support for the working class. Rook had grinned, already imagining the possibilities. Dashiell had nodded, but his hand had been in his pocket checking that his phone was still recording. Something was going to happen, something bad, and this time there would be evidence. Thursday, 8 p.m. at McDonald's on Riverside was never busy. The dinner rush had passed, leaving only a handful of late-night studiers from the community college and a few families grabbing quick meals between activities. Saffron was working the register, her movements efficient despite the broken glasses held together with tape that she'd worn for 3 days now. The manager, Gary, had offered to let her leave early, seeming to sense trouble brewing, but she'd declined. I need the hours, she'd said simply, though Gary had noticed she'd done something odd during her break, a series of stretches and movements that looked almost like a dance, but were clearly something more purposeful. He'd seen similar routines before, years ago, in places he didn't talk about anymore. The bell above the door chimed at 8:23 p.m., and Braxton entered with his full entourage. Not just Dashiell and Rook, but 6 other boys from Westmont's lacrosse team, all wearing their Letterman jackets despite the warm evening. They moved like a pack, spreading out to block exits without seeming to, a practiced intimidation formation. Watching her stand there behind that counter, trapped between minimum wage and maximum privilege, what would you have done? Would you have run, called for help, or would you have stood your ground like Saffron, whose hands remained steady on the register despite being outnumbered 8-1? Drop a comment below. I genuinely want to know how you would have handled this moment. Because what happens next changed everything. Welcome to McDonald's, Saffron said, her voice carrying that professionally neutral tone all service workers perfect. May I take your order? Braxton sauntered to the counter with the exaggerated swagger of someone who'd never faced real consequences. His crew spread out behind him, occupying space like an invading army claiming territory. 2 of them pulled out phones, already recording what they assumed would be another humiliation for their private group chat. Actually, Braxton said, leaning across the counter until his face was inches from Saffron's, I'd like to order something special, not on the menu. Do you serve dignity here? Self-respect? Or did you already sell those for minimum wage? Gary started forward from the back office, but Saffron raised one hand slightly, a gesture so small the cameras wouldn't catch it, but one that stopped the manager cold. He'd seen that exact signal before, in Kandahar, when his squad leader had spotted an IED. Wait, watch. Be ready. I can offer you a McChicken combo, Saffron replied evenly, though I'm not sure you can afford it. Your father's assets were frozen this morning, SEC filing at 9:47 a.m. Eastern. The Prometheus investigation expanded to include money laundering charges. The color drained from Braxton's face so fast that Rook actually reached out to steady him. That's impossible. You're lying. Check your phone, Saffron suggested mildly. Though your trust fund won't be affected until the criminal charges are filed. That's scheduled for Monday, according to the Department of Justice website. Public information if you know where to look. Braxton's hand went to his phone automatically, then stopped. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, his rage crystallized into something colder, more dangerous. You know what? You're right. I should order something. He grabbed a cup from the counter, filled it with Coke from the self-serve fountain, and walked back to Saffron with deliberate slowness. "Here's your tip," he said, and threw the full cup at her face. The Coke exploded across Saffron's uniform, dark liquid streaming down her face, her broken glasses knocked askew. The shock of cold made her gasp, but she didn't step back. Didn't raise her hands to wipe her face. She stood perfectly still as Braxton reached across the counter and grabbed her glasses, already damaged and held together with tape. "These things are pathetic," he announced to his audience, holding them up like evidence of her poverty, "just like you." With theatrical deliberation, he snapped them completely in half, then threw the pieces on the floor and ground them under his heel. The crunch of breaking plastic and glass was audible throughout the restaurant. "My grandfather survived the Chechen Wars," Saffron said quietly, Coke still dripping from her chin. Those glasses were his. He wore them when he escaped from Grozny during the siege, when he carried my grandmother through 40 miles of winter forest with shrapnel in his leg. They were the only thing I had left of him. Something in her tone made Dashiell step forward. "Braxton, maybe we should—" "Shut up," Braxton snarled. He vaulted over the counter with the fluid motion of an athlete, landing beside Saffron in the employee area. "You want to play games? Research my family? Threaten me with your pathetic working-class gossip?" His hand shot out, grabbing her collar. "Let me show you what happens to people who don't know their place." Gary moved then, faster than his middle-aged body should have allowed. But Saffron was faster. Her hand came up in a motion that looked defensive but was actually offensive, her palm striking Braxton's wrist at exactly the right angle to trigger the nerve cluster. His grip released involuntarily, and in the same motion she pivoted, using his own momentum to guide him face first into the fryer hood with a metallic clang that made everyone wince. Braxton bounced back, stunned but not down, his nose already bleeding. "You crazy!" He swung at her, a wild haymaker that would have knocked out most people. Saffron didn't block it. She redirected it, her hand sliding along his arm like water, guiding his fist past her face and into the milkshake machine. The impact shattered the plastic housing, sending vanilla soft serve exploding across the wall. Before he could recover, her knee came up, not into his groin as expected, but into the inside of his thigh, hitting the femoral nerve cluster. His right leg went completely numb. As Braxton stumbled trying to process why his leg wasn't responding, Saffron's foot swept his left ankle. But this wasn't a simple trip. She caught his leg mid-sweep, her hands controlling the descent while applying rotational force. The human knee is designed to bend in one direction. When twisted while bearing weight, the ligaments tear first, then the cartilage separates, and finally, if enough force is applied at exactly the right angle, the bones themselves fracture. The crack when Braxton's tibia and fibula separated was loud enough to stop traffic outside. His scream came a half-second later when his nervous system finally processed what had happened. He hit the floor behind the counter, his right leg bent at an angle that would haunt everyone who saw it. The bone hadn't broken through the skin. Saffron had been precise about that, but the deformity was obvious even through his designer. Jeans, the entire sequence, had taken 3.7 seconds. Rook vaulted the counter, reaching for Saffron, but Gary intercepted him with a move that suggested his McDonald's manager credentials might not tell his whole story. The older man's forearm strike sent Rook sprawling back into the dining area, gasping for air. "Nobody move," Gary commanded, his voice carrying authority that had nothing to do with fast food management. "Police and ambulance are already en route." Dashiell had his phone out, but not to call for help. He was uploading the video directly to 3 different platforms, his fingers flying across the screen. 2 million views in the first 10 minutes, 5 million by the time the ambulance arrived. By morning it would break 50 million, spawning countless reaction videos, news segments, and frame-by-frame analyses of Saffron's technique. But right now, Braxton was still screaming, his hands hovering over his destroyed leg, afraid to touch it. His crew stood frozen, their worldview shattered as completely as their leader's bones. They'd grown up believing money was the ultimate power, that their family's influence made them untouchable. Watching Braxton writhe on the floor, that certainty evaporated. "You know what's funny?" Saffron said, kneeling beside Braxton as they waited for the paramedics. She'd found a replacement pair of glasses in her backpack, thick, outdated frames that made her look even younger. "You were right about me being nobody. Saffron Volkov doesn't really exist. She's a cover identity created 14 months ago when my handler decided it was time to surface." Through his pain, Braxton's eyes widened. What? What are you talking about? Your father's company, Whitmore Defense Industries, sold classified drone technology to Chechen militants in 2019. That technology was used in an attack on a refugee convoy. 43 people died, including 2 American intelligence officers. She pulled out her McDonald's name tag, flipping it over to reveal something that made Gary nod in understanding. A federal badge, the kind that came with very specific authorities. My parents. The sirens were getting closer. But Saffron kept talking, her voice clinical now, all emotion drained away. I was 13 when they died, old enough to understand what happened, young enough to be molded into something useful. The FSB found me first, the Russian Federal Security Service. They thought an orphaned girl with American citizenship would make a perfect asset. They were right, just not in the way they expected. Daschle was still recording, the phone shaking in his hands as he realized he was documenting something far beyond high school drama. You're a spy? Was, Saffron corrected. The CIA extracted me 2 years ago, turned me, trained me properly. Did you know your friend's father has been under investigation for 18 months? But white-collar crime is hard to prove. Physical evidence gets destroyed. Witnesses get bought. Lawyers muddy the water. So they decided to try something different. Send in someone who could provoke him into revealing himself. You used me, Braxton gasped through gritted teeth. Your father used you first, Saffron replied. Every bribe he paid to keep you out of trouble, every victim he silenced, every record he had destroyed, it all created a pattern. You were raised to be exactly what you became. Cruel, entitled, and absolutely certain you were untouchable. The perfect tool to expose his methods. The paramedics burst through the door, immediately moving to stabilize Braxton's leg. One of them, a young woman with steady hands, took one look at the injury and called for immediate transport. Compound fracture of both bones, possible nerve damage. We need an orthopedic surgeon standing by. As they loaded Braxton onto the gurney, Saffron stood and walked to where Daschle was still filming. You're recording all of this? He nodded, unable to speak. Good. Make sure Adelaide sees it. Tell her Braxton won't hurt anyone else. Daschle's phone nearly slipped from his hands. How do you know about my sister? I know about all of them. Every victim, every cover-up, every payment. Whitmore Defense Industries has been using Westmont Prep as a testing ground for their psychological operations protocols. Identify vulnerable targets, apply pressure, document the breaking points. Your friend Braxton was both a test subject and a weapon. His father's been selling the data to private military contractors. Gary stepped forward, pulling out his own phone. Control, this is Kingfisher. Package is secured. Target is neutralized. Request immediate extraction for the asset. Extraction? Rook finally found his voice. What is this, a movie? No, Gary replied, his manager's demeanor completely gone. This is what happens when very bad people think they're too rich to face consequences. Saffron here just gave us enough video evidence to take down not just Whitmore, but 6 other defense contractors involved in the network. Through the window, they could see black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Not local police, something federal, with the kind of subtle markings that suggested 3-letter agencies. Saffron pulled off her McDonald's uniform shirt, revealing a compression athletic top underneath. She moved to the back office, returning with a gym bag that had definitely not been there during her regular shifts. Wait, Daschle called out as she headed for the door. Is any of it real? Your grandmother, the scholarship working here? Saffron paused at the door, considering. My grandmother is real. She does work 3 jobs, though not to pay rent. That's covered. She works because she can't stand being idle. Surviving Grozny does that to you. The scholarship is real too, in a way. I am learning at Westmont just not what they thought they were teaching. And the glasses? Daschle asked. Were they really your grandfather's? For the first time since Braxton had grabbed her, genuine emotion flickered across Saffron's face. No, my grandfather died before I was born, fighting the same militants who would later use Whitmore's drones. The glasses were just glasses, but Braxton needed to believe he was destroying something precious to me. People reveal their true nature when they think they're causing real pain. The federal agents entered, their movements professional and coordinated. One of them, a woman with silver hair and eyes like winter, nodded to Saffron. Time to go. Moscow Station wants a full debrief. Moscow Station? Rook whispered. But you said CIA. I said I was extracted and turned, Saffron corrected. I never said which direction. Turns out sometimes American and Russian interests align, especially when it comes to arms dealers who sell to terrorists. As she walked past the agents toward the black SUVs, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. Not alarm exactly, but sudden attention. "Ma'am," she called to the silver-haired woman. "We have a problem. Whitmore Sr. just landed at the private airfield. He's not running. He's coming here." The woman's hand went to her concealed weapon. "How many with him?" Thermal imaging shows 12 signatures approaching from the south. Professional formation. He's brought military contractors. Saffron looked back at the teenagers still frozen in the McDonald's. "Get them out, now." But it was too late. The lights cut out, plunging the restaurant into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in hellish red. Through the windows they could see figures in tactical gear taking positions around the building. "Gary," Saffron said quietly. "Protocol 7. The manager, handler, whoever he really was, nodded grimly and moved to the freezer. The back wall was a facade that swung open, revealing an arsenal that would have made a SWAT team jealous. "Kids, listen very carefully," he said, handing out what looked like emergency road flares but were clearly something more sophisticated. "These are smoke markers with infrared tags. If shooting starts, pop one and drop to the floor. Extraction teams will prioritize your location." Daschle was still recording, his phone's night mode capturing everything in eerie detail. "This is insane. This can't be real." "Your father launders money for terrorists," Saffron told him bluntly while checking the magazine and a compact pistol Gary had handed her. "Rook's uncle takes bribes from human traffickers. Half the families at Westmont are involved in something that would horrify you if you knew the details. Why do you think they picked that school? It's not about education. It's about grooming the next generation of criminals who think they're just businessmen." A voice boomed through a megaphone outside. "This is Braxton Whitmore Sr. I know you're in there with my son. We can resolve this peacefully. Send out the girl and everyone else goes free." Saffron laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. He really doesn't understand. This was never about his son. Braxton was bait, a sociopathic puppy we knew would eventually bite, creating the evidence we needed. She moved to the window, staying low. The tactical teams were good, spread out, overlapping fields of fire, no obvious gaps. But they'd made one mistake. They assumed they were dealing with a teenager and a middle-aged fast food manager. "Sasha," Gary said quietly, using a name none of them had heard before. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," she replied. And for a moment, the 16-year-old girl showed through the operative's mask. "They killed my parents, sold the weapons that destroyed my life, and then they raised their son to be just like them." She looked at the terrified Westmont students. Evil isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just rich people deciding that profit matters more than lives. The silver-haired federal agent spoke into her radio. "All units, we have a situation. Whitmore has gone rogue with private military contractors. Request immediate backup and air support." 5 minutes out, came the reply. "We don't have 5 minutes," Gary observed. The tactical teams were moving closer, using vehicles as cover. "They'll breach in 2. Saffron made a decision. She pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. "Daschle, is your live stream still running?" "Yeah, 40,000 viewers and climbing." "Good." She held her phone up to the camera. "This is Agent Sasha Volkov. Authorization code Whiskey 779. I'm transmitting classified files regarding Operation Clearwater. Whitmore Defense Industries, Coda Shipping, Brennan Financial, Stormwind Security. All of them are implicated in selling weapons to designated terrorist organizations. The evidence is uploading now. Download it. Spread it before they cut the feed." Her phone screen showed a progress bar. 60%, 70%, 80%. The front window exploded in a shower of glass as a flashbang grenade sailed through. Saffron moved before it detonated, grabbing Daschle and Rook, pulling them behind the counter as the world went white and silent. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard the doors being breached, boots on broken glass, shouted commands. But she also heard something else. Helicopters. Not the steady rhythm of law enforcement birds, but the distinctive rotor sound of military aircraft. Gary heard it too, his face grim. "Those aren't ours." "Upload finished?" Saffron asked. 100%. 50 million viewers now had access to everything: financial records, communication intercepts, even video recordings of Whitmore Sr. negotiating with known terrorists. The internet had it all, spreading faster than any cleanup crew could contain. "Everybody down," Saffron yelled as the first helicopter opened fire, not at them, at the tactical teams outside. Whitmore's own contractors scattered, confusion reigning as they tried to determine if this was friendly fire or a new threat. Through the chaos, a new voice cut through, young, female, speaking accented English through the restaurant speaker system. "Sister, it's time to come home." Saffron froze. That voice. She knew that voice. It was impossible. "Anna," she whispered. "Hello, Sasha. Did you really think you were the only one who survived?" Father would be so disappointed. "You chose the Americans over your own blood." Gary grabbed Saffron's shoulder. "Your sister is dead. This is a trick." "No," Saffron said, staring at the helicopter hovering outside. Through the searchlight glare, she could make out a figure in the doorway, small, lean, wearing tactical gear. The face was older, scarred, but unmistakable. "She's alive. The FSB, they told me she died in the drone strike." "They lied," Anna's voice continued. "Just like the Americans lied to you. Both sides used us, Sasha, but there's a third option. Come with me. We have so much to discuss." The federal agents were shouting into radios, trying to coordinate a response. But the situation had spiraled beyond anyone's control. Whitmore's contractors were engaging the helicopter. The feds were trying to secure the civilians. And in the middle of it all, two sisters separated by years and lies faced each other across an impossible divide. 10 seconds to decide, Anna said. "Then I leave and you'll never find me again." Saffron looked at the terrified teenagers, at Gary who'd protected her for 2 years, at the federal agents who'd given her purpose after her parents' death. Then she looked at the helicopter, at the sister she'd mourned for 3 years, at a past that apparently wasn't past at all. She made her choice. "I'm sorry," she said to Gary, then moved. The smoke grenade she threw wasn't standard issue. It released a dense cloud that blocked both visual and thermal imaging. In the confusion, she vaulted through the shattered window, sprinting across the parking lot faster than should have been possible for someone who'd just been in a fight. The helicopter dropped a rope ladder. Saffron caught it, climbing with practiced efficiency as bullets sparked off the aircraft's armored hull. Below, she could hear Gary shouting her name, her real name. Not Saffron or Sasha, but something else. Something none of the witnesses would later be able to recall clearly. As the helicopter banked away into the night, Dashiell kept his phone trained on it until it disappeared into the darkness. The livestream showed 120 million viewers now, all watching as the story they thought they understood transformed into something else entirely. In the aftermath, as paramedics treated the wounded and FBI agents took statements, one detail stood out. On the counter where Saffron had stood, someone had left a single item, a pair of broken glasses carefully arranged to spell out a word in Cyrillic. Voron. Raven. Dashiell looked it up later. In Russian military terminology, Voron was a designation that didn't officially exist, referenced only in fragments of intercepted communications. It referred to assets trained from childhood, loyal to no nation, serving only the organization that had created them. 3 weeks later, Dashiell received an encrypted email. No sender, no subject line, just coordinates and a time, 48 hours from now, 3 a.m. He should have ignored it. Should have turned it over to the FBI agents who still checked in weekly. Instead, he found himself at the specified location, the Westmont Prep Library, 2nd floor, the exact table where Braxton had first confronted Saffron. A laptop sat open, showing a video feed. Saffron appeared on screen, but she looked different. Older somehow, though only weeks had passed. Behind her was another girl, nearly identical despite the scars. Anna, the sister who shouldn't exist. "Hello, Dashiell," Saffron said. "By now you've probably figured out that nothing about Westmont was coincidental. Your father's money laundering, Rook's uncle's corruption, Braxton's father's arms dealing. It was all connected. Part of something bigger. We were never working for the Americans or the Russians," Anna added. "We work for ourselves now. For the other children whose parents were killed by weapons that shouldn't exist, sold by people who thought wealth made them untouchable. Braxton will walk again," Saffron continued. "Eventually, his father won't be so lucky. Neither will the others. The evidence you helped broadcast started something that can't be stopped. But here's what you need to know." Anna leaned forward. "Westmont Prep has a new student starting Monday. Eastern European. Scholarship kid, probably wearing broken glasses. Be nice to her, Dashiell. You never know what someone's really capable of." the screen went dark. When Dashiell tried to replay the video, the laptop had wiped itself clean. But on the keyboard, someone had left a single item, a fragment of glass from Saffron's broken glasses, the one supposedly belonging to her grandfather. He picked it up, held it to the light. Through the cracked lens, he could see something etched into the glass. Not Cyrillic this time, but coordinates. New coordinates, another time, another choice to make. Behind him, footsteps echoed in the empty library. Dashiell turned to find a girl he'd never seen before. Tall, dark-haired, with an Eastern European face and cheap glasses held together with tape. She sat at a nearby table, pulling out second-hand textbooks. "Excuse me," she said with a slight accent. "Do you know if the library stays open late?" Dashiell looked at her, then at the glass fragment in his hand, then back at her. The cycle was beginning again. Or maybe it had never ended. Maybe this was how the world really worked. An endless series of secrets and revelations, hunters and prey, broken glasses and broken bones. "Yeah," he said finally. "It stays open as late as you need." The girl smiled, and something in that expression made Dashiell's blood run cold. It was Saffron's smile. Exactly Saffron's smile, despite this being a completely different person. Or was it? As he left the library, Dashiell noticed something he'd missed before. Every table had someone sitting at it. All new faces, all with the same careful positioning, backs to walls, exits in sight, all wearing glasses, all watching him. His phone buzzed. Another encrypted message. This one just 2 words. "Welcome, Raven." He understood then. Saffron hadn't been the only one. She'd been the first. Or perhaps the prototype. And now they were everywhere, scattered across prep schools and private academies, each one a broken pair of glasses waiting to reveal something sharp beneath. Dashiell kept walking, the fragment of glass cutting into his palm. Behind him, he heard the new girl's pencil scratching against paper. It sounded like math homework. It sounded like something being calculated. It sounded like a countdown. The story that began with Braxton breaking. A pair of glasses hadn't ended with his legs snapping in a McDonald's. It had only revealed itself to be part of something vast and patient and terrible in its precision.